started. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 6:07 p.m. I'd announced that the meeting is being recorded. And Jonathan, can you do a roll call?
Yeah, Director Brandt.
Here.
Director Geis is absent or late. Director Bertrand.
Here.
Director Thurlow.
Here.
Director Hedges.
Here.
Director Nguyen.
Here.
And Director Freeman.
Here.
Okay, before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. So, we have called this special meeting to speak about the upcoming item in front of the Goleta City Council regarding library services in Isla Vista, and consider sending a letter to the City Council of Goleta to ask them to make modifications to staff's recommendations for library services in Isla Vista. I want to give first a brief overview of our board's participation in libraries so far to refresh for everyone, and then give a little bit of a synopsis of what the City of Goleta staff is recommending, and then what I propose we should send in response, and a little bit of an overview of the strategy thus far for getting services for Isla Vista. So you may remember that the City of Goleta seceded from the Santa Barbara City Library System in 2017 and 2018 was when those discussions were happening. Then following that, their plan was to take over the library systems both for the City of Goleta, the No Lita unincorporated area, as well as Hope Ranch, Isla Vista, and since then, the city of Solvang and Buellton have joined their library system, and the City of Goleta now administers their libraries on a contract basis rather than the City of Santa Barbara system. In April of 2019, myself, Jonathan, Jay, met with Gina Fisher from Joan Hartman's office, Joan Hartman, Michelle Green, City Manager of City of Goleta, Allison Gray, Director of Library Services, and spoke about how the Community Services District could participate in the library process. One of the things that came out of that meeting was our discussion that we had at the board meeting on June 25th of last year, where we participated in what's called a Harwood conversation. This was their public outreach process to solicit input on how libraries could best serve Isla Vista. And during that discussion, our board was asked to identify 3 things that were our top priorities, and we identified the following: access to literacy and reading programming for youth and families as number 1, services for college-age individuals such as students, such as common books, textbooks, course reader reserves, and a dedicated study space. Number 3, that services should be provided within Isla Vista limits rather than outside, so that we have our own individualized library services. From there, they continued to conduct their Harwood process and spoke with a number of other groups, including the Isla Vista Youth Project's food distribution, as well as, here, I'm pulling it up, don't have it in front of me, as well as the Isla Vista Elementary School PTA. Also in June of that year, Assemblymember Monique Lamone was able to secure $200,000 of one-time funding from the state for a satellite library in Isla Vista. We heard about this a number of months later and weren't able to get very good information on it until I'd say very recently about what exactly the purpose is for. But we have been able to confirm that it is specifically one-time funding to support the development of a satellite library in Isla Vista. and that money will be administered by the state library system, given to the city of Goleta. Now, the city put out their report, which is linked to the agenda, about the results of the Harwood process. And I just want to say at the outset, one of the things that really stood out to me when I read this report was the groups that they talked to in Isla Vista. Normally, when people try to do outreach in Isla Vista, it is our youth and families that are overlooked. They're one of those populations that is harder to reach, and they're also just not thought of by people when doing outreach as much. The city of Goleta has done an excellent job in making sure that they have found avenues to be able to reach them and solicit feedback from them. However, one thing that is very glaring is that there were no student groups or predominantly student groups, really, other than our board of directors, which at the time had 3 students on it, that were solicited for their feedback. And that is something that to me really stood out, given just that our population in Isla Vista is 50 to 60% at least enrolled college students, 80% under the age of 24, and really made me feel like the study was probably going to be a little bit incomplete. Some of the results that they took away from their study was that they found that people, by and large, preferred either services that would allow them to travel to the Goleta Library, or services that would bring programming and libraries specifically to the Isla Vista community. And so that was a really positive thing. I want to give a little bit of an overview of what their staff recommended to the city council. They recommended that instead of going with an option that would provide like a physical space for libraries in Isla Vista, they recommended that they move forward with purchasing a van that would then provide on-site mobile programming to a number of different locations. And the way that I think a number of us have felt is that this, while a good and creative step, is not adequate to our community needs. We have one of the things that we expressed when we met with them back in April, and moving forward as this process unfolded, was that we, as a community services district, have our Isla Vista community room. Our Isla Vista Community Center is now online. This is a prime opportunity for us to collaborate as partners in order to bring library services here to the community in a physical location that offers that certainty of knowing that those services are going to be there, rather than just a van that goes from location to location. Another thing that really stood out to us is that the amount of money that the Goleta Library was proposing to contribute towards the option that they were proposing of the van was far less than the amount of money that Isla Vista generates in per capita revenue in tax dollars from our community. We generate around $200,000 per year in revenue, and the first year's cost, or the ongoing cost of this option, would have been around $60,000, or I'm sorry, around $90,000. While there was another option that I want to go into that we felt was a little bit better. They also have an option for an Isla Vista reading room, where there would be 24 hours of total service per week. There would be internet and computers, as well as books for checkout, and dedicated staff on site to facilitate the space. Now that we have begun to take some of our operations and programming that was in the community room into the community center, we felt that it was appropriate to put on the table, hey, Goleta Library, you could do your programming out of the Isla Vista community room. It's a larger space than what had previously been discussed with them, or maybe out of the Isla Vista Community Center if they have the need for larger programming. So what we are asking in this letter of the City Council is that they support a modified option that looks much more like the Isla Vista library reading room for Isla Vista, that would put more resources back into the community of Isla Vista and make sure that there were dedicated services at a physical location. We think that that's a better opportunity for us to grow libraries in Isla Vista moving forward. This wouldn't be the same thing as having a full service branch library, but it would get us a lot closer to that goal, I think, than just having a model that was strictly mobile. So the last thing, and I think the important part of the letter, is that we are saying loud and clear that we propose that we want to partner by providing free or low cost facilities rentals to the Goleta Library so that they can accomplish this goal, and support from our staff as they move forward with different community outreach and marketing that may come up in the process of this. Really, libraries, especially now that we can't really go outside and go out in public, it's really punctuated how important they are as public spaces. And I really think that this is important for us to send a strong message that we want to be there to support, and that this is a priority of our board. And yeah, so that's sort of the presentation on this. Jonathan, is there anything that you would add that you think I glossed over?
The amended report. It's that the way this funding is working is, or the way they are thinking about the funding versus how we might be thinking about the funding and how others might be thinking about it at the county level, is the funding for doing anything in Isla Vista that's beneficial in library services is they're taking all the costs out of the $200,000 that Assemblymember Limon secured for us for the development of a library in IV, and taking none of the costs out of the $200,000 that we pay into the main system. So the $200,000 that Isla Vista taxpayers already pay for library services, that none of that money will be used to augment library services to be more beneficial for IP, and they're only drawing money from the $200,000 from the state of California. And then on top of that, I mean, I think it's just, I have a lot of other concerns. Maybe I don't want to get into all of them, especially like with the budget and, the fact that they want to spend almost 25% of the budget to overhead of Goleta City administration out of the $200,000. It's just, it doesn't seem like a budget that was built with us necessarily at the forefront of their mind. So
I will also just say, in terms of moving forward, Jonathan and I have been in communication with, at this point, 3 members of the city council, and I have a meeting set up with the 4th tomorrow morning to express these concerns. We have overall had great reception and sympathy, understanding from them. Really, Isla Vista has been paying this per capita money towards libraries for a really long time and not been able to see any specialized services that the community was asking for. And so I think that they understand that it is a little bit of an equity issue. Outside of any of the cities in Santa Barbara County, we are the largest unincorporated community that pays into libraries that does not have our own branch library. So I think that once that is stated, people really start to come around and understand a little bit more how much of an equity issue that this is. And really, the last thing to punctuate this, and the letter mentions this, is that when our district was created and when Assembly Bill 3 to create us was written and the community weighed in, the community facilities power specifically mentions libraries as a facility that we have the power to operate for a reason. And so while we really want to see a partnership with the city of Goleta move forward and work, because I think that we're all stronger together, that is still an option that is on the table for us, would be to ask the county supervisors to directly allocate the per capita funding of $200,000 a year to us and have us run the library in-house. Again, I think we are stronger together, and I think that we have a lot of different benefits to staying in the Goleta library system, working out programming with them, and with the expertise that they and their staff have. And so that's why we're recommending this. But that is an option that's on the table. So I want to just throw it out there for any questions that anyone has. If you have your webcam on, you can raise your hand. I saw Jay had his hand raised. And also just want to offer anything that you want to say, Jay, as our member on the Library Advisory Commission, first and foremost.
Yes, I wanted to provide, so I've already provided this context for Jonathan and Spencer, but I want to provide everyone else some more context on what happened at the Library Commission meeting. One of the things that is listed in the supplemental staff report from the library director is that the advisory board was very excited, very specifically about option 4. And I want to provide context for that because I wouldn't exactly describe that as what happened. So there were 4 options that were listed. One of them was to do a bookmobile. One of them was to do a full branch library. One of them was to do a small library room in Isla Vista. And one of them was this option I kind of call potpourri, but is listed as like van/hybrid. And that was the option that you can kind of tell also that the library staff was kind of setting us up for. Now, the bookmobile option involved the upfront purchase of a very expensive vehicle. It seemed to me like rather than purchasing that vehicle ahead of time, if you could kind of test something in a smaller situation, you could essentially get. I could take a step back, just provide this funny bit of context. So I work in software development, and in software development, there are these kind of 2, you could almost call them competing ideas for how to construct software, but really it's the entire software community has decided that one of them makes sense and the other one doesn't. The one that does not make sense is what we call waterfall development, where you sit ahead of time and you come up with the entire concept for what you're going to do. You spec it out entirely. You look forward 6 months in advance. You figure out exactly who's going to do what, and then you all build that until you get to the end, and then you kind of release the software. The other system that people almost always use some variant of now is called agile development. And in agile development, you try something and then you get feedback on it, and you try something else and you get feedback on that, and you kind of have an ongoing conversation with the client or the customer or the end user as you're building your product, as opposed to kind of assuming that you can figure out that all ahead of time. So in the case of this library services thing, it really feels like this waterfall approach is being used. What's happening is that we've already spent now 6 months in Harwood conversations in order to try to figure out what to do in order to then come up with these like large budget ideas that then are going to be executed in their entirety. And so you look, for example, at the bookmobile budget item, and it figures out how to spend all the money that they thought that they should be spending, which isn't enough. I agree absolutely wholeheartedly with some of the comments that were made about how the budgeting is being operated. But what was interesting to me and some of the other board members about option 4 is that it provided a framework to switch to a more agile development process. So, but I don't think that that's how the library director or the current library staff is looking at it. And that's the nuance that I think was lost in the conversation with us and the library staff. So option 4 has got, for example, let's purchase a van, and then let's put a van wrapping on it to make it look like a library van, and then have a subset of the same equipment that would go in the bookmobile in the van. And so I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, the van is 1/10 the price of the bookmobile. What if we go with the van? And then if the van is really popular, we upgrade the bookmobile. Okay, what are you gonna do with the van? Okay, well, another one of the commissioners pointed out, we don't even have to buy the van. How about we lease a van for a couple months and then see how that goes? And we don't have to wrap the van initially. We can start buying some equipment. The way that the budgeting items worked, the same equipment that you would put in the van was part of the equipment that would go in the bookmobile. So you don't lose any money if you try leasing a van, set up the van, and then decide we really should have gone with the full bookmobile. But the van also then had the option of letting you have multiple vans. And so that was something that particularly Lori was pointing out, that there are people both in the Isla Vista community, but also just if you just take a step back and ask the question of who is the library not serving? And there are a lot of people who may or may not be in Isla Vista. And so rather than just, well, the bookmobile might solve one place. But if you had like 2 vans, maybe you'd have more flexibility in how they're deployed. You'd have more flexibility in how they're staffed. And so the way that I feel like at least a couple of the other people on our library advisory commission were looking at this option 4 is that the library staff had figured out all these little small things, figured out all the little budget items for them, and now we could just start executing on them. How about right now? So one of the ideas is that we should be doing more programming in Isla Vista. Okay, well, how about, and I think I pointed this out during the meeting, just right now, why don't we just set up a monthly story time reading thing? There's this thing that they do with kids where they've got a mediator, no, it's not a mediator, but like, you know, it's like whatever, you know the term I'm looking for. And we're like running the room and like, you know, reading a book with everyone in the room and getting everyone excited about reading. What if we ran one of those in IV right now and we just did it in the community room? And then we see who shows up. And then we can ask them, what did this work? Should we do something different? And then you can start this kind of like agile thought process. Whereas the bookmobile one, if you go to option one was just like, we're going to plunk down a ton of money on something that may or may not be useful to anyone. Then you look at, okay, option 2 was to build a branch, like actually build a branch. And if anything, we thought that they had under budgeted it because the per square foot cost that they allocated for a full branch seemed really low for Isla Vista. Option 3 was something that, and that's what Spencer's bringing in here in this letter, is something that I like the idea of trying to pull option 3, but we were told by the library staff that would be illegal. And the reason why was because in their description of option 3, they were only looking at using one of our upstairs meeting rooms, which they said is what in the negotiations they had with the IVCSD was the room that we'd have accessible for that. And that was not ADA compliant, and that therefore we would not be able to actually run a library in a small meeting room in the upstairs area of the community resource building. And so that then turned into, well, option 4 has got this flexible framework. And so if we think of it as a flexible framework, like it has got 4 vending machines. Why would we buy 4 vending machines? Let's buy 1 vending machine and see if anyone uses it. If no one likes the vending machine, maybe it's not even a good vending machine, maybe the equipment breaks all the time, you don't buy the other 3 until you've tried the first one, right? And that also would provide, we already have the staff member. What if the staff member starts doing the community room reading programs? We could rent the van. And so that was where the excitement surrounding option 4 as a potpourri option came up. And then the supplemental staff report, though, that's now going to the city, I look at that and I'm like, oh, no. Like they just want to execute option 4. They just want to like, okay, and they're like, we're going to start buying all these things, do a bunch of setup for this. Maybe, hopefully in October, we'll be able to start execute, like actually having it work. And I'm like, no, what? Like the whole thing that was fun about option 4 is you can just do it now, right? Like you just do it now. And so I think that's where that big disconnect occurred between our advisory commission and what now the staff is taking to the city council. And I think that us sending a letter as proposed and written by Spencer here is a really good move to make, demonstrating, first of all, that we want to bring back in the idea of option 3 and kind of like removing some of this aspect of just like the importance of executing option 4 perfectly. So.
Thank you for that, Jay. I want to open it up for other members of the board if you've got comments or questions.
Spencer, may I speak?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Spencer, for opening up and setting the stage for what's being considered. Thanks, Jonathan, for your analysis, and Jay for your comments as well. I largely agree with what's been said. I think that this is a great opportunity for Isla Vista. I think it's a really awesome opportunity for partnership between the Community Services District and the Goleta Valley Library. And I think that we can best accomplish enhancing the services by having a lot of what's described in option 3, which is to have physical space in Isla Vista using our space at the community room, the community resource building, and perhaps any office space that's required. I think that's a great option. But then I also do like the idea of taking some services out into the community to different locations, doing some pop-ups. But I think it's important that the library in Isla Vista has a home base, and I think that's something that we can really bring to the table. Additionally, I think our space is fantastic for a lot of the special programs that the library could conduct, whether that's at the community room or the community center. I look at a lot of what we're doing right now with our IB Youth Projects contract, and we have a number of amazing programs, such as the family literacy program that takes place with homework help for kids, different wellness classes for parents, and a number of community events that are already taking place that could really complement this new service. And I think that we have existing members that we're serving that would be a great audience for the Goleta Valley Library's programs. So I just think it makes the most sense to do option 3. I think that the Goleta Valley Library staff has been very well intentioned in this process, but I also know Isla Vista is a very unique community in our county, and we serve a diverse population, and it's important that we come up with services that can meet the needs of the community, which can definitely be hard to figure out from folks who aren't working in the community every day. But by us working together, I think we can really produce some good services. So thank you, Spencer and Jonathan, for your leadership on this.
Can I speak?
Yes. Thank you, Ethan, for your comments. Go ahead, Christy.
I agree with Ethan, and I think that we should be utilizing the community room as a library room, but I also really like the idea of experimenting with the options that we have, just to see which one is the most successful, so we're not funneling all of our budget into something that might not work. But as of right now, I think option 3 is the most, I think it's going to be the most successful, because just utilizing our community room and people finally noticing that there's something that they can use that's not the library or a coffee shop, and just use our community room. I think that's a lot more efficient. But like I said, I think that we should be testing the waters just to see which one is the most successful, so we're not spending money.
Thank you, Christy.
May I speak?
Yes, Father John.
I like anything that builds infrastructure for the city of Isla Vista, that enforces the notion that we really are taking our place among the governments of men, taking our place among the cities of California. And what this is in a sense, and that may be pushing things a little bit there, as I often do, but what this is it's a placeholder, and it enforces the fact that we are out of the realm of transiency and into the realm of permanency. And in a sense, having a space that is dedicated for so wonderful a function of any community is a grand step forward. But I also, on the other hand, like the option of taking that function out into the community. And so the flexibility that's there in some of the ideas that are in number 4, I think could equally be accomplished. But I do like the idea of setting a space.
Thank you, Father John. Bob or George, do you have anything to add?
No, it's been very informative. Thank you, all of you that have done some work on this. It's a great step forward. Are you ready for my motion?
Not quite yet, but thank you, George.
Okay. I'm gonna let Jay's gonna make the motion.
Before we do that, I want to open up public comment. This is the time for any members of the public to speak on this item. Do we have any requests to speak? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board.
And Spencer, I have one more comment, please.
Go ahead, Ethan.
So just one more thing that I want to mention, and particularly mention to you, is so when I think about the $200,000 grant from Assemblymember Limon's office, since it's a grant and not ongoing funding, I do think that it's good that goes to some one-time costs as opposed to operating. So I definitely see benefits in using some of that on some pop-up spots in the community to supplement our physical location around the community center and community room. But also like thinking about some one-time type costs or more capital costs that this could be used for. I think about the digital divide that exists in our community, which perhaps we're seeing now more than ever before, as folks are forced to work from home more, little kids forced to take classes from school at home, and college students doing the same. And there's a lot of people without basic technology in Isla Vista. And like one idea for service in Isla Vista that could be provided by a library is a community technology loan, where community members can check out not just books and magazines, but also a Chromebook or a tablet or a Wi-Fi hotspot. And I think it's creative things like that that we can really help suggest, and that would make a big difference in the community. So I want us to think more about those things as we move forward.
Thank you, Ethan. Go over to Jay.
On that note, so the Goleta Valley Library actually has a program they call the Internet of Things. Sorry. No, not that's yeah, the Internet of Things is actually horrible. The Library of Things, as a play on words on Internet of Things, and where they actually do loans such as that. So and they will loan you things like if you want a VR headset, toolbox. They've got a bunch of stuff that they are able to loan, like actual useful objects like that.
I think they've even got like a cake mixer.
Very cool. And one more thing that I discussed with Spencer yesterday, because I know Spencer brought up months ago the desire for students to have greater access to free course materials. Another thing that we could explore is for some of the very common or more common courses at UC Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara City College, perhaps purchasing or renting licenses to some of that academic material so that it could be accessed online. I know that the two schools do some of that, but there are still a lot of gaps. And again, just an idea for how library services in Isla Vista might look different than services in other areas of the Goleta Valley.
Thank you for bringing that up, Ethan. And that's actually what I've spent a fair amount of the afternoon doing, is doing research to see what other public library systems are doing in regards to textbooks and other undergraduate college course materials. And I have been able to find a number of examples where public library systems do carry college textbooks. I'm from the beginning have really been thinking of focusing in on our college courses, whether they're at SBCC or UCSB, that are large courses, that are introductory courses, where there will be able to get the highest utilization of certain textbooks. So one good example that actually comes from a good friend of mine who graduated this past year is a textbook that is used in a class that I never took because I was a history major. But it is Calculus by James Stewart, used in Math 3A and Math 3B at UCSB. That's a book that's carried by a number of other library systems, including the Los Angeles Public Library. And Math 3A and Math 3B for all STEM majors that I know are almost, you're going to be taking one of those two, unless you test out of them. So it's those sorts of things that I think could be really helpful and really get to the core of what we talk about when we talk about Isla Vista being such a unique community with such unique needs. And so I'm really excited. When Jonathan and I spoke with the library director and the assistant city manager of Goleta earlier today, we also spoke about the possibility of doing some sort of a system where the Goleta Library has a contract with our publishing houses on campus, such as Associated Students Publications and SB Printer, so that when there are course readers that come out each quarter, they would be able to get one copy of a number of those to keep on reserve, meaning that people could check them out for 1 or 2 hours or 3 hours at a time and then return them on site. I think that this is a really innovative way for us to be able to get our college student population into the library and utilize that space along with our youth and families so that we can really integrate everyone into these services. So overall, I'm really excited about moving forward. This is all sort of, I know for us, and we had to call a special meeting and it sort of has come together at the last minute, but that does not indicate any feelings of worry that I have. I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to get services for Isla Vista that our board is very supportive of and that we'll be able to play a great role in partnering with. Jay, I see that you've got your hand, so I'll go over to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I kept anticipating you're about to finish, and then it's like, oh wait, no, he's not actually finishing. So I just wanted to pick up a point about the textbook idea, which I think is a great idea if we could figure out something to do about it. But I just want to make certain it's understood that UCSB does care. I mean, UCSB has got all these students who are having to keep repurchasing textbooks, and this ends up being this like this extra, sometimes almost unpredictable cost associated with signing up for a class. It's not like they necessarily always know exactly what the cost of everything is. Like you're sitting there like with the course code. It'd almost be nice to have like the extra costs that are going to be associated with books for them. So people would have to make choices like that. And sometimes they're just forced right into classes that are part of like intro sequences. And so you end up like UCSB Cares. They're trying to solve that problem. And the reason why they haven't quite solved that problem is because of this complicated racket that is really what it is, with the way that the publishing companies with the textbooks handle the textbooks. So the specific book you mentioned is now in its 9th edition. And the problem is that the questions that like there's like the homework assignments are built out of questions from the book. They arbitrarily modify and reorganize the questions, changing constants in the various algebraic equations, putting them in different orders so that the answer keys and like if you tell students, okay, do the odds on page 37, well, that's a different set of questions depending on what edition you have. And they re-release the edition of that, like that specific textbook every 2 years. And so the problem is that it feels like something, it's like, yeah, it's the same book people have been teaching from since literally the 80s, but it's not. And that's the problem, that if UCSB, like, if there was like a solution for this, I'm sure, I've heard so many conversations, people, UCSB would have solved this problem and they'd be very happy to solve this problem. And that's where I think a lot of the hesitation of trying to jump into that without having a lot of background on the thought process and trying to see if there's actually is some like specific set of classes maybe we could try to target or something, but it is these are expensive textbooks that weirdly expire in a very short period of time, and that everyone is using in parallel. And so it's not even like, okay, well, you would have like, a copy or two. It's like, no. Everyone has to do their homework assignment this Saturday. And like, okay, well, there'd be like 300 people in that intro calculus class who are all trying to get access to it now within the next 4 days. And like, it's just, that's the problem.
One last thing that I'll just throw out there on that note is we've also just started I threw together a couple lists of just common books that are assigned in college courses that are of historical or literary merit. The first thing that came to my mind was Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. That's a book that could be assigned in such a variety of different disciplines, whether it's environmental studies or environmental science, history or political science courses, and is really also not just of merit for its ideas, but has its own place in the historical context. Those are the sorts of books that we already have carried at the Goleta Library and in the Black Gold system that could be easily, sort of bundled together for students in Isla Vista to check out. And I'm sure that as we move forward, we'll be able to, refine just what those books are, so that we can create something that we have a section specifically for our studying college students. So with that, is there anything else that our board has? If not, I think that we are ready to entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the president of the board to submit this letter to the Goleta City Council.
Second.
The motion from Freeman, seconded by Thurlow. Is there any public comment on this motion?
So Jonathan has typed a slightly different motion. He typed supporting option 3 on the staff report, which actually isn't what the letter does. What the letter does is it requests to implement a hybrid of options 3 and option 4.
Okay.
Jonathan has now said supporting a hybrid of option 3 and option 4. That is friendly with me if that's what people are excited to vote for. George?
That's good.
Okay. Is there any further board discussion on the motion? Okay, with that, we'll take a vote. Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yes, Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Geis,
I'll abstain since I missed most of the meeting. Sorry about that.
no problem. Director Bertrand,
Sorry, aye.
Director Freeman,
Aye.
Director Hedges,
Aye.
Director Nguyen,
Hi.
Director Thurlow.
Aye.
Motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 abstention. Thank you, everyone. I will get that sent over, and we'll be there at the meeting tomorrow night and continuing to talk with our the City of Goleta staff and council.
Spencer,
Okay.
this is George. George here.
Go ahead, George.
Do you need any members of CSD to be in attendance at that meeting tomorrow night? Or is it overkill?
All board members are welcome to be in attendance. It is a virtual meeting due to the crisis, just like we're having now.
Okay.
If you'd like to call in, that information, it was just sent out on their email list earlier today, and it should be on their website.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Okay, with that, we can move on to reports. It's not been that long since we've met, so I don't know if anyone has reports. Do we have any reports from board members?
Ethan here. I just want to really celebrate how amazing our community's compliance with the stay-at-home order was this past weekend. Deltopia was originally planned, and obviously our district was planning to do a lot with that. But when it became clear that it was not safe or healthy to do so, our community really got the message. And kudos to all the community members who made this happen. It was a really special thing to see.
Thank you, Ethan. Any other reports from members of the board? All right. Well, I will echo those thoughts and really thanking the community for being so compliant with the stay-at-home order and continuing to be compliant. Reports from committees. I don't think we have any reports from committees. I will say our working group on tenant mediation is going to meet tomorrow at 4:30. Report from district council. Okay. Report from general manager.
Nothing that can't wait until next week, but I echo what Ethan said about this last weekend, and I'm looking forward to working with the City of Goleta staff on creating a, something that's realistic based on what we can offer in a partnership. So we looking forward to that. I think there's a lot of potential here.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, our next meeting will take place on April 14th at 6 p.m. It will be here over Zoom or teleconferencing services, just like it has been. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
I have a motion made by Freeman, seconded by Nguyen. Any public comment? Any further discussion? All right, Jonathan, can you do roll call?
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Geis,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Aye.
Director Freeman,
Aye.
Director Hedges,
Yes.
Director Nguyen,
Aye.
Director Thurlow.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. We will see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye
Take
now.
care, everyone.
Thank you.
So long, everybody.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Jonathan.